It's been 40 years since the very first Super Mario Bros. Game came out for the NES. And when the Italian plumber first braved the Mushroom Kingdom in 1985, Neil Armstrong had done the same on the moon, only 16 years before. It's been almost 50 years since the Atari 2600 was launched. The same year, the first Star Wars movie hit theaters. And when Luke Skywalker blew the Empire to bits in 1977, France was still executing people by guillotine. People who witnessed these events have more than just a few gray hairs now. A lot of people look back on those times as something that's long gone, lost in the past. And other people look at it with nostalgia, that warm, fuzzy feeling that tells us that back in the day, things were better. They are a demographic that actively seeks out their childhood. They refuse to let old times die. They fill up their houses with all kinds of entertainment from the 90s, 80s, and even earlier. Gamers are notorious for their nostalgia. Adult gamers today are not just playing with these old games. Retro gaming is not just a lifestyle. It is a market estimated to be over $2 billion, and some of them even say that it already hit the 10 billion mark. Retro gamers are a slice of the population that just don't let things go. And we're about to meet a few of them today. Today we're about to take a peek into the lives of these different video game players and learn why they love these old pixels so much.
Ever since the first video game I played, it felt like magic.
It takes me to another world, helps me relax.
If you can call it a game even, I think that's putting it down, calling it a game. Because it's an interactive experience.
It allows me to transform myself to other worlds.
To me, there's something really magical.
To be someone else, to experience stories, adventures, to meet friends.
Express your own fantasies, make your own narratives. It's a place I go to relax, you know.
You have a connection with what's behind the screen. That interactivity that has never stopped being magical.
It's an amazing medium. It's just awesome. And you can really lose yourself into it.
It has the same value as movies and books, theater, music, as another pillar on that whole construct that makes up entertainment.
For some people, football is their thing. For me, it's collecting games. It's like my type of football.
And only video games are capable of doing it in that way, that you feel like you're part of that world.
Like, no gameplay experience is ever truly the same. It requires a player to be put in a specific mindset, within a specific magic circle of rules, and then go nuts, do your thing.
I like to be the protagonist, the hero, to achieve something. Be the one who's driving the story. And that's something games allow you to do in a broad sense.
To relax in the evening, you know, but I also like to play fighters, for example, to just beat up my friends. That's also one of the things I really like.
People always used to say to me, oh, you'll grow out of it. No, I won't, and I didn't.
It's part of me too, because I played it and it formed me as well. They have an impact on how I think and what I like.
It still feels magical to me, because it's such a complete package of music, art, and then also you do something yourself. You participate in it.
We always look for a dopamine boost. Maybe that's a part of it.
I need it as a form of escapism, I love it as an art form. I think that's highly underrated how much of an art form it is.
The things from the past are, I feel that they are really strong, really embedded in your brain.
Balding men in their 30s, responsible dads in their 40s, collectors whose houses are true shrines of worship for video games, people who grew up in the 80s and 90s, back in a time when becoming an adult meant letting go of your childhood. They witnessed the birth of a hobby that today reaches nearly 3.5 billion people worldwide. But how things have changed. God forbid you were a grown man in the 90s with video game action figures in your bedroom.
Yeah, those are really cool, huh?
Yeah, I like this stuff. I like this a lot, this stuff. So this turns into also a robot.
Fast forward to the 2020s, and it looks like being a grown-up is a completely different thing. Nowadays, it's downright a Peter Pan syndrome. Speaking of Peter, deep in the Dutch countryside, we meet such an adult, Peter Scheffer, or as he's better known in the world of video games, the retro game papa.
I am Peter Scheffer. That's my Dutch name. You can pronounce it in the English way if you want to, Peter Scheffer. And I'm 43 years old. My wife's name is
Birgit Bettina, also known as Bebe.
And she is
40 years old. I've got 2 sons.
And I'm single.
One that's called Wolf. He's 10 years old.
And one of 5 years old, and that's Yuma. I am also a drummer. By profession, musician, and mainly teacher. I'm in a band, yes.
I've been playing music for all my life. I play 25 instruments. Violin, guitar, mandolin, tin whistle, low whistle, piano, harp, blues harp, harmonica, accordion, button accordion, concertina, banjo, psalter, trumpet, bugle, cello. I've got insects. You want to see them? I think they're interesting and they're beautiful.
We also got a dog. It's called Bowie, and it's a she. So this is my my collection. It's a lot. It's most of these cabinets are 3 rows deep, and it's over 3,000 games now, different games. So I hardly have any doubles, and I don't count them within my collection.
If Peter wasn't a collector or a gamer, my house would have been empty and clean. When he buys games and stuff, he puts it on the attic. The attic is his attic. He can do whatever he wants, but please don't put all your stuff in the living room.
I keep most of my consoles in boxes at the moment. Whenever I want to play on 1 or 2 of them, I take them downstairs and I put up a CRT TV downstairs. So downstairs is where I keep it to a minimum.
Yeah, that's some kind of the deal we have. I can paint the living room pink and he won't complain a word about it, because that's my space. Yeah, except for... But yeah. Ja, ik ga met Bowie lopen, want daar heb ik geen zin in.
While Bowie tends to her Bowie movement, we travel a bit further north and meet up with Michiel. His story gets mixed up with the history of gaming itself. From a job at Nintendo, all the way to the pilot seat by making his very own video game.
My name is Michiel Kroder. I'm almost 50 years old. I'm from the Netherlands. I live in Lelystad currently. I do a variety of things. I'm a freelance content editor, content manager. I also am a podcaster, mainly about video games and arcade games. And I also am a video game developer. When I met my friend Hans at Nintendo of Europe, we started a game development studio together. We started working on a prototype for a game. I was already living in the Netherlands, closer to Amsterdam at the time. And Hans was, of course, in Heidelberg, where he lives. So we started working at a distance.
My name is Hans. I am 43 years old. I've been living in Heidelberg for the last 22 years with a couple of interruptions. It's my favorite city in Germany. I've been in Japan for a couple years in between. I met my friend Michiel in Frankfurt, actually, where he was working at Nintendo, and I did an internship there. You know, we had a similar taste in games. That was a big one, but also just he's a lovely person. Don't tell him that. Shield Might MX is a retro-inspired, but not really retro, side-scrolling, horizontal scrolling shmup. It's similar to very old shmups. Michiel came up with the core idea for Shield Might, a central mechanic that is pretty different from a lot of shmups.
It's a game that sort of asks the player not to dodge the bullets, but to fly into them and start collecting them until their shield wears off, and then they have to start dodging before they can reset their shield again. We built the game in Unity. Well, Hans did mostly because he's the programmer. He built sort of like an editing environment for me in there in which I could start designing the levels of the game.
So this is the first stage of the first loop, right? So it's the very first thing. You see the enemies coming in from the right and from the top, and some of them fly in like formations. Like these guys fly in this parabola curve around the screen. And this is all stuff that Michiel did in his level editing.
If I click on one, for example, I see like where its coordinates are. I can change that. I can also just move it around and put it in another position. The way we built Shield Might MX is basically everything exists in various loops. So every stage, when you enter a new loop, has different layouts and different stage hazards, different enemies appearing.
The x-axis actually determines when they spawn in. So these are the first enemies that spawn in, and towards the end, these are the last ones, ending with the boss.
Just to show you how quickly you can change something and then immediately test it, I'll do something very stupid. I'll copy this end of stage boss. I'm going to put him at the start of the stage as well, fairly early in, and then we should be able to see this boss appear in the middle of the stage all of a sudden. Yeah, there he is. Just appearing in the middle of the stage. This seems a bit stupid to put an end of stage boss in the middle of the stage, but it's just an example of how quick and easy it is to just change stuff and experiment with it and change things up.
All of these layouts, Michiel or any designer could edit on their own. They don't need somebody technical to do that for them. So if you want to move one of those asteroids, right, you just select them and move them. It's as simple as it gets. So as you're seeing from Michiel, he's working within the same framework. He's also working within Unity. I made the tools for him, and then he used the tools and gave the results back to me. That's the main way how he was able to give his ideas shape, and I made the tools to enable him to do that, basically.
It's very much inspired by the very first side-scrolling shooter that I ever played on the NES, which is called Gradius. Like a lot of the basic patterns and enemy designs are based on Gradius, because I felt like it's better to start at the beginning, start at the basics.
There's this thing, right? You remember retro games looking in a certain way, but actually they didn't look that good. So we're going for that a little bit. Looking retro, but in a more high-tech way that was actually possible.
The music was composed by a Canadian composer called Ed Tremblay, and he cranked it out very fast, like the first few themes. And it was so good, in fact, that we felt like we had to step the graphics up as well to match the music.
I think I was playing Contra or something that has a end of stage jingle type of thing, like the victory fanfare. I contacted Ed and said, "Hey, we want to have a victory jingle at the end of the stage," and he just made that in like a day or two, which is crazy to me.
When we were exhibiting at Tokyo Game Show, Hiroyuki Maruyama appeared on the scene, but we didn't know it was him. I knew the name, and I'm a big fan of this man's games, but I never saw a picture of him. And he started playing our game, and then Hans was standing next to him, and he was saying, "So, do you like STGs? Do you like shoot 'em ups?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I've made a few myself." And then I was poking Hans like, yeah, it was an immense moment. He was giving us compliments on our game. He really liked it. Still one of the coolest moments of my life, really. One of the most exciting things about making a game is that realization that you're adding to the history of the medium with something. You create something that might be meaningful to some people. That is a big thrill.
Yeah, it's just an amazing feeling having your own game on some actual proper gaming hardware.
While Hans entertains himself with his own game, we travel back to his small town in the middle of the Netherlands. There lives Jordi, who likes to create stuff too.
My name is Jordi de Lot. I'm 33 years old. Currently, I work as a train driver. However, I worked as a motion graphics designer for Dutch television. I worked on several shows, doing the opening credits, logo designs, 3D work, 2D work. So this is an example of my motion graphics work. You would think that that's the original Game Boy Advance intro, but actually, you can edit this. And here you go. You have the same animation as the Game Boy Advance, but then with the text nostalgia. When I was younger, I wanted to be a game designer. Doing motion graphics, it was of course highly influenced by all the games that I've been playing. These kind of small projects makes me very excited to work on things game related. So you see this back into my projects where I try to recreate a scene of a certain game, because I think that's fun. It's reliving the game. You look at UIs and stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, can I make a version for this TV show? This was my way of expressing the love I had for video games and then somehow incorporate it into my work. I had this obsession with video game music, and in 2011, I wanted to do more. Like, I want to have a video game music band. And so my band Sector 8 was born. And we played for several years together. And every time we got the reaction, we loved it, you're like a party band. Because yeah, we tried to play music that would fit a concert. That got the nostalgia going, because hey, we're shooting a video clip and we have to have it in a certain style that matches the game. So we ended up in the pandemic. That was the point where people wanted to play music together, but they weren't able to. This is where the Virtual Video Game Orchestra was born. Virtual Video Game Orchestra is an orchestra that arranges music, then makes the parts of that music available to everyone who wants to play that music. Then you record yourself, and the video team will start creating the video based on all the videos they've gotten. And then they create like one video with a perfectly mixed song. And when I found them, I was like, hey, I would love to be part of this. I think retro game music works the best. When you come from software instruments from the 90s and you actually start translating that to instruments, that's where it shines the most, and that's also where I have the most fun with it. The difference with the original becomes epic. Brendan Harnish was leading the Virtual Video Game Orchestra back then. And he said, hey, join the video team. So when we did the 5th song, I ended up doing graphics as well. Okay, this is a screenshot of the forest. From that point, I started cleaning everything up. You can see my process of adding more and more layers, cleaning stuff away. And then slowly you get more pieces of forest. And then in the end, you have a nice looking image. And then you have like the foreground, which is over the videos a little bit. And then in the end, you have this as the result. That's where the graphics first started to shine. That constant nostalgic feeling of, yeah, reliving that moment, but also creating your own world with it. I've been working on the projects from Golden Sun to Final Fantasy VII. I recreated those environments and it's like, yeah, I can actually relive the games in a different way, experience them in my own way. When I look at Ballad of the Goddess, I am filled with joy. I feel like I'm reliving this game in a sort of superior way. I'm still like, how did we pull that off? It sounds amazing, it looks amazing. We managed to do something that I wonder if how many other people could have pulled that off. I built the entire Skyloft in the Unreal Engine. And where I started was getting the model from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and put that into the 3D scene. So that I had like a rough vision of how it actually looks. So this is that actual model. Yeah, that's not something you want to put your videos in. So I started building. We can start adding in all the different layers of everything that I've built. You don't want to place everything by hand, so I built tools for like the bricks. We can just add a spline and change the length of it, and it will add more bricks along the line. You have a fence, you can easily extend it by another piece of fence. And you just keep adding more fences.
So Jordi drives trains, is a graphics artist, and plays the sax. Are we forgetting something?
Building a pinball machine. One of the craziest ideas that I ever had. This is the Shadow pinball machine, which I bought when I was 20. In 2011, I lived with some friends. There came the idea like, okay, what would it actually cost to buy a pinball machine? I just went to a website and thought, hey, they're selling pinball machines. So I just wrote them an email and like, hey, I'm very interested in having a pinball machine. And then they introduced me to the Shadow. I went there with my mother's car. At the same day, I left with that pinball machine at the back of the car. It was like sticking out almost a meter out of the car. And I've been the proud owner ever since. The idea became that, oh, it'd actually be kind of fun to build a pinball machine myself. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna build a pinball machine, what theme should it be? Now, I chose The Binding of Isaac because it was such an amazing video game. It was also the way it impacted me, the nostalgic feeling I have for it. I got obsessed. I probably played around 800 or 900 hours. So this is the dot matrix display, or in this case, it's a RGB LED screen. And this has like 32 pixels by 128 pixels. Here you have like the original dot matrix displays, how they made them in the 90s, which is just a single color display. So that translates roughly to what I have here for the pinball machine I'm making. The only difference is that this does a full RGB spectrum, and this cannot do that. This is what will display the graphics on from the pinball machine. So as you can see, this representation in the Godot engine shows what actually will be on screen. So basically what you see on this pinball machine on screen there will be this screen, but then on this machine that I'm building. And currently, this is just made up with elements from different pinball machines. And this is the playfield. When you start the game, with your flippers, you can select the character you want to play with. So you have enemies flying around on the screen. And Where they are on screen is represented on the pinball machine. So basically, they're currently here. So the software showed like the flies on screen. And this is, for example, where the fly was flying in correlation to where they were on screen. It's also the challenge. How can I fit as much information as I can on that screen? Although the original art is larger in size, the images are bigger than the actual screen, I have to actually redesign icons and things like that to make it fit the the actual screen size. Here you can see the actual original art from the game itself. But the problem is that it's already too large for the screen. The height of the dot matrix display is just 32 pixels. So I have to recreate all the items to be much smaller, more in the direction of 10 pixels in height. Designing a pinball machine is very complicated. It's not just software, it's hardware. This is how that looks underneath. So this is just the wiring for all the mechanical things. So no lighting and stuff like that. Just to be able to recognize the switches and power the solenoids for flippers. And we have quite a lot of them. Or the drop-down targets are like over here. You touch them and they come back and the solenoid pushes them up again. Currently, I thought it's better to focus on the software first. What is the gameplay, what I'm gonna do? And I leave the hardware for what it is right now. Of course, I can never sell it, but that's not why I make this pinball machine. I make this pinball machine for me. I don't think people will understand it completely. They just see a pinball machine and they're already happy if they can keep the ball in the playfield.
Well, good luck to Jordi getting this thing built. While he double checks for loose wires, we move on not too far, the city of Utrecht, where we get to check out a very special collection.
My name is Giancarlo. I'm 39 years old. I live in Utrecht, the Netherlands. For a profession, I work in IT. And I'm also working on a mobile game. So, this is my room. This is where I play my video games, my retro games. I'm a very proud owner of a Panasonic PD30. This is a Pioneer Plasma TV. I love plasma. Motion looks incredibly good on plasma. This is my Sony Trinitron. It's a 240p TV, a very unique one. You can force games 60 Hz with this. It has some very rare options. Here are all my games. Mostly retro games. I also have modern games, but they are in a different room. My N64 games. Some very awesome game is Paper Mario. Nice wrestling game. Goomon. I really like Goomon. My Game Boy games. Kid Dracula. It's a spin-off Castlevania game. Very rare, especially in this condition. I think it's at least $1,000. Yeah. Very, very awesome game. When I was really young, the first 1,000 euros that I had, I bought a big collection. And I cherry-picked a few games and sold the rest. I think I started collecting video games like 15 years ago. I went to thrift stores. There was a Super Nintendo game, it's Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I bought it for like €1. It's complete in box, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Maybe I need to go again to the same thrift store the next day. So I went the next day to the thrift store, and there were a bunch of Mega Drive games, and I bought them all, and I was like, oh, this is nice. A lot of good things they threw away, like magic cards. Of course, I bought them. And there was also a box full of NES games. And I felt like a child that found a treasure. All these games in mint condition, new. I paid €10 for all the NES games. It's like most of my NES games, almost all these NES games I found in that bag. The next day I said, do you need people to work here? So I went to work there. Before you know, you have a lot of games.
But thrift shops are not the only stop for retro collectors. Today we set off to visit such a place in the south of the Netherlands.
We are in Tilburg. It's a long-standing convention. It used to be in a small sports venue, but it was getting too busy, too crowded. More and more people started coming, more vendors, and got too full. and they could relocate to this location. So it's much bigger, much more room. My name is Roy Pelders. I used to be in IT and in retail in the toy industry. I am here as a vendor. I'm selling the overflow of my collection. I've been collecting like for, I think, almost 30 years. This is my game room. This is mostly only the retro stuff that stays here. I've amassed a lot of things over the last, I think, 30 years maybe of collecting. It used to be rows on rows of games in the past, but I've downsized to things that I really want to have, see and feel. My collection is always on the move. I used to accumulate a lot and save everything. And now the last years I've been selling something off. And I don't do this for a living. I like it when I am directly in touch with people who buy a game from me. And I can talk about the game or what it means to me or them. Hoi. Ja, is je goed? Ja, is netjes, hè? Ja, wil ik graag hebben. Nou, leuk. Die heb ik er niet afgehaald omdat ik zelf vind dat dat heel nostalgisch is. Omdat die keten niet meer bestaat, volgens mij. Sometimes it's nice for me to just walk in this room and just a few minutes somewhere on the day in the morning or when I get home. Not even to play, but just to rearrange something, look at some games that I have, just get that vibe of, hey, I'm very lucky to have all these things. Like the Atari system, those are mostly the games that I had as a kid or played a lot. One that really pops out, I enjoy looking at, that's why it's displayed on the front, is Hero. I used to play with just joystick. This one is iconic for me because I broke a lot of them in the past playing Decathlon. It was a sports game and you had to move the stick and you broke them off. Yeah, this is something that I like to see when I come in because it takes me back to fond memories and I like that.
We'll leave Roy to dwell in his memories for a bit and make a pit stop in the beautiful city of Amersfoort. There we meet up with Joe, whose heart races at the thought of the old days.
My name is Joe van Buurik. I'm 37 years old. I live in Amersfoort. I'm a tech journalist. I work for BNR News Radio and I also make appearances on television from time to time. What's it like to be making these games which are played and enjoyed by millions and generally just trying to spread knowledge and enthusiasm from time to time, awareness, if you will, about the world of digital technology? So as part of my career, I was also a Formula 1 journalist, wrote this book, Formula 1 for Dummies, which will always be mine. I'm the author. This will always be the book that's connected me to F1. So I very much grew up with cars. My parents weren't into games at all. You weren't able to drive when you were young, but you were able to play racing games. And my dad apparently overheard me talking about the N64. I don't even remember that. So he did buy the N64 together with Mario Kart 64. So this is where it all really started for me. Mario Kart 64, the first ever console game I got when my dad bought it for us. I played Super Mario Kart on the SNES before, and it was fun, but it never felt so liberating and so incredible, to put it like that, because it's 3D. 3D environments, 2D sprites, but still 3D polygonal environments. And you were just racing through the Mushroom Kingdom. And my dad played with me, actually. I remember I was already in bed and he would sneak up to my room, just put his head around the corner and say, I beat the Mushroom Cup at 100cc with Yoshi. Are you proud of me? Apparently he did even briefly enjoy racing games for what they were. And perhaps that was inspiring for me to take that way further. So this is where the magic happens for me and my racing crew every Monday night in my sim racing setup, play seat, Trustmaster wheel, actually a fairly old Philips HD TV, and we play Gran Turismo 7 currently with gloves because I'm a bit pretentious. It's a leftover from my days in motorsport. I think there were periods where I would only play racing games. As a games journalist as well, I would specialize in racing games, review racing games, interview racing game developers. After becoming a games journalist, I became a car journalist and a motorsport journalist. I raced some cars myself in the real world. Really enjoyed all that. But it was a different world compared to the games. And even though I still really like cars, I find the games to be more enjoyable than the real thing. That probably says something about me, But I bet it says even more about what the developers sought to achieve and what they did achieve.
And achieve it, they did. These old games did not just entertain a generation. They also shaped our past and echoed in our future.
The first game I can remember is Super Mario Kart. I think that made the most impact on me back then. It's kind of funny because I would think that Super Mario World will be the first one that comes to mind, but it's actually Super Mario Kart. For me, the Super Nintendo will be the best console of the 90s.
I played a lot of Super Nintendo games, yeah. Those are still the ones that I have probably the most nostalgia for. Probably the Game Boy being the second.
Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Country 3, Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. I loved the game. The soundtrack was amazing.
The spark of collecting retro games has always been around. But it's become a blazing fire for a few years now. And rather than being just some local heat, the flames have actually spread around the world. Some 10,000 kilometers south of Amsterdam lies the metropolis of São Paulo, Brazil. It's the biggest city in the Southern Hemisphere and home to 23 million people, which means no shortage of passionate gamers and plenty of shops which are more than happy to provide. One of those is Sil Games, one of the most traditional places in the city. A cozy and friendly neighborhood shop that's been bringing video games to the Brazilians for nearly 50 years.
Meu nome é Edson, eu criei a Sil Games 48 anos atrás e eu mexia com eletrônicos, disco, timba, guitarra, vitrola. Eu abri a loja em 1978, eu tinha 21 anos, né? E percebi que o videogame ia para frente lá para 82, 83, que aí eu comecei a me especializar em Atari, foi pro Master. O boom mesmo foi o Super Nintendo. O Super Nintendo foi uma coisa que deu assim uma virada de chave na loja.
Eu trabalhava em banco, fiquei 17 anos no Itaú e eu ficava só aos finais de semana na loja com o Edson ajudando ele. Eu fui me apaixonando pelo ramo, né, pela loja, pelos videogames, que já era videogame na minha época, eu já entrei no videogame.
De 10 que entram aqui, 9 é quase certeza que vão comprar. Ah, mas entra um cliente por dia, ele vai comprar. Porque o cara vem direcionado para comprar alguma coisa que a gente tem na loja. Aí a gente entra na lembrança. Não adianta você pôr um emulador para ele. Ele quer ter aquele joguinho para matar saudades do pai, da mãe, ou mesmo do tempo de infância dele. Ontem um cara perguntou de uma fita. Ah, nós falamos, ó, tá aqui, é o X o preço. Aí ele falou, a fita não está na condição que eu quero. Se você olhar a fita, você dá risada. A fita está impecável, mas o cara quer uma melhor que aquilo. Alguma coisa de sentimento tem ligado. Isso que a gente acha legal.
A gente tem um cliente muito querido que é o Marçal, que passou a fazer parte da nossa família também, né?
Como o Marçal já é fissurado por videogame, ele caiu aqui já faz muitos anos e a gente se tornou muito amigo. Eu tenho uma dúvida, eu ligo pro Marçal, porque ele manja muito.
Meu nome é Marçal, tenho 36 anos, moro aqui em São Paulo. Eu tenho um canal no YouTube que eu falo bastante sobre retro gamers, chamado Beatsman. E minhas páginas no Instagram, no X, mas no YouTube eu falo mais sobre gameplay mesmo. Eu gosto muito de ver os consoles mais fracos sendo extraídos ao máximo. Eu acho que isso me fascina muito mais do que você pegar um PlayStation 5 Pro e saber que ele vai ter um gráfico excelente. A gente tá aqui na Sil Games, né? Justamente porque é um lugar onde eu comecei a fazer a minha coleção de videogame. Eu nunca me importei muito em ter uma coleção de videogames. Meu primeiro console foi o Mega Drive. Aí eu dava ele com todos os cartuchinhos que eu tinha.
Dava de entrada.
Dava de entrada. Aí eu peguei o Sega Saturn. Aí fiz o mesmo com o Dreamcast. E eu falei, mãe, eu quero um PlayStation. E o PlayStation não tinha representação aqui. Então eu vi o Dreamcast na loja.
Mas eu vou te falar, PlayStation vendeu, viu?
Vendeu muito.
PlayStation bateu recorde, né?
É, ele matou o Dreamcast praticamente, né?
Bateu legal. Foi bem... Um produto muito vendido na época, até hoje é vendido.
Que tudo isso que você comprou há 15 anos atrás se você quiser se desfazer,
não desvalorizou.
Você pega o mesmo preço, até mais.
Isso, no mínimo o mesmo preço.
Porque valorizou demais.
Sim.
Se tiver em bom estado, você vende rapidinho.
Esse aqui, por exemplo, é um dos itens que eu mais me orgulho de ter na minha coleção. A SEGA parou de produzir o Dreamcast e a SEGA do Japão pegou algumas unidades e parecia que ela queria dar uma sobrevida para o Dreamcast quando ela lançou o Dreamcast Reset. Não aconteceu isso. Então existem pouquíssimas unidades desse aparelho no mercado.
Tanto é que custa umas 7 vezes mais que um Dreamcast normal.
Tradicional, né? Sim. Mas, por ser... hoje o Dreamcast é o console que eu mais gosto. Então ter esse aqui na minha coleção, para mim, é fantástico, sabe?
Aqui a gente vende muito rápido jogos bem tradicionais. Por exemplo, Pokémon. Pokémon, qualquer um que eu colocar, eu bato recorde de tempo. Porque tem um público enorme. Porque assim, eu tenho Pokémon aqui de Wii U, está aqui há 3 meses. Mas eu não tenho nenhuma fita aqui, nenhuma de Game Boy Advance. Pokémon Game Boy Advance, Pokémon de 3DS, vende em 3, 4 minutos. E assim, o cara prefere pagar, ter a fitinha e guardar lá, porque aquilo lá é um troféu para ele.
Sim.
Diferente de um Pokémon de Switch, que sai e tem um monte.
Então, interessante que você falou agora do Pokémon, do Game Boy Advance e entrou no mérito do Switch também. Tipo, por exemplo, a gente tem o Zelda Ocarina of Time, do Nintendo 64. Se a Nintendo lançasse um cartucho físico de Zelda Ocarina of Time idêntico para você jogar no Switch, qual seria a sua percepção?
Vai vender por quê? Porque é Zelda. Mas se você fizer uma comparação com o cartucho, se eu colocar 5 jogos de Switch e 5 cartuchos do Zelda do mesmo jogo, eu vou vender mais rápido o cartucho.
Do 64.
Do 64.
Com certeza.
Entendeu? Porque já é público que tem sentimento de anos atrás.
O sentimento da pessoa é de ter o cartucho,
Ocarina,
não de jogar o Ocarina.
O Ocarina, para um menino que joga Switch de 15 anos, não é a mesma coisa para um cara de 30 e pouco que nem você.
Sim.
Entendeu? Então, continua afirmando que vai vender mais rápido o cartucho. Você pôr um Pokémon de Switch, vai vender que nem água, porque tem o cliente Pokémon. Mas se eu tiver o cartucho Pokémon, eu posso puxar até mais dinheiro do que um Pokémon de Switch. Aquele cara que está querendo aquela fita, que gostou, que está faltando, ele paga.
Sim.
Entendeu? Então, não dá para comparar jogo antigo com novo. As expectativas são as mesmas, as finalidades são outras.
Eu sou Rafael Monteiro, tenho 36 anos, moro em São Paulo. Eu tenho uma grande paixão, que é videogames. Apesar de eu não trabalhar com isso, eu trabalho com inteligência artificial. E alguns eventos o pessoal brincava, né? Ah, o Rafa Monteiro chegou. Pô, você tem uma coleção muito legal. Foi então que eu acabei criando um canal no YouTube, só para falar de retro games e colecionismo, que é o Monteiro Retro Games. E galera, estamos aqui em Osaka, na nossa caçada gamer. E eu virei um colecionador aqui, como muitos outros, durante a pandemia. 6 anos depois, 7.000 jogos e 70 consoles na coleção, assim. A maioria é americana, mas tem alguma coisa europeia, alguma coisa japonesa. E aqui, pessoal, a gente tem alguns itens que são um pouquinho raros, né? Então, por exemplo, você tem um Graded Ocarina of Time, né? Essa aqui é a versão americana, que é a Collector's Edition. Esse item aqui, pouca gente vai conhecer lá fora, que é um item que só saiu no Brasil, que são os Big Box do Zelda. Mas também, ó, a edição brasileira, que foi fabricada no Brasil do Majora's Mask. Mas você tinha também o Big Box, super bem conservado. Foi até eu que cadastrei ele no Price Charting e no eBay, porque esse item não existia lá, era um item que ninguém conhecia. Então, toda vez que você for usar algum aplicativo de colecionismo, entendeu? Foi eu que fiz o cadastro desse cara. Eu compro na Seal Games desde 1996. Se no Brasil existem um casal que são os pais do retro game, acho que de todos os colecionadores, com certeza são eles. Eu acabei começando pelo Nintendo 64, que foi um videogame que me marcou muito, assim, lá pra 97. Como ele era um full set relativamente pequeno, 300 e pouquinhos jogos, eu demorei 1 ano e 3 meses, fiz viagem para os Estados Unidos para comprar jogo, fiz caçada gamer em outros países, e aí eu completei o full set. Aí eu falei, eu gostei. Então agora, vamos pro próximo console que foi, assim, pra mim, o mais marcante de todos. PlayStation 1. O grande próximo alvo da coleção, que é o full set do PlayStation 1. Estão faltando aí 102, 103 jogos, né? Eu já tô com mais de 1.200 jogos aqui. Uma encrenca, né? Um jogo bem difícil de você achar aqui, ó. Persona 2, Persona 1. Estão no top 10 ali jogos mais caros de PlayStation 1, de acordo com o Price Charting. E aqui é o jogo mais raro, que é o Misadventures of Trombone. Esse jogo aqui ele é um spin-off do Mega Man, tanto que essa edição aqui ela inclui o demo do Mega Man Legends 2, né? E é um jogo de mais de $600.
Brazilians have always been passionate gamers since video games were a thing. But Nintendo only officially arrived in the country in 1993 with the Super Nintendo. 5 years later, in September 1998, their official magazine called Nintendo World hit newsstands all across the country. Journalist Pablo Miyazawa, only 20 years old at the time, was there at the birth of the publication and saw it happen.
Meu nome é Pablo Miyazawa, eu sou jornalista e trabalho com isso há 30 anos? Por aí, 3 décadas. Comecei minha carreira como jornalista de games fazendo a revista Nintendo World, daí eu trabalhei na revista Rolling Stone, no Brasil, também escrevendo sobre games, e aí eu fui o editor-chefe do IGN Brasil. Nintendo World surgiu no Brasil em 1998. A ideia era fazer uma revista oficial da marca Nintendo. E tinha a Powerline, que era um sistema de dicas por telefone. Comecei minha carreira lá atendendo o telefone. Basicamente, a gente dava dicas e estratégias dos jogos da Nintendo. Uma média de 300 a 400 ligações por dia, num momento em que a internet não existia. E eu enxerguei aí uma oportunidade de mudar do atendimento para o jornalismo impresso. Isso aqui foi eu que escrevi. Não foi assinado, não sei porquê. Essa aqui foi a edição de aniversário. Primeiro aniversário. Nesse momento, a gente descobriu que a Nintendo World era a revista de games mais vendida do Brasil, né? E ninguém acreditava que isso fosse possível. E a gente até publicou aqui um anúncio. A gente criou esse anúncio aqui para provocar a concorrência. Essa aqui é uma das favoritas mesmo, né? Foi a edição da primeira E3. E foi a primeira vez que eu assinei um editorial. Que a gente colocou aqui uma fotinha junto com o Miyamoto. E onde a gente podia, a gente colocava as fotos que eu fiz com o Miyamoto, né? O meio revista, ele é único. É uma experiência muito particular. Você não consegue ler uma revista e olhar o celular ao mesmo tempo. Você precisa estar prestando atenção. É uma comunhão entre o autor da revista, o autor da matéria e o leitor. A edição de aniversário de 3 anos da Nintendo World nunca esteve na banca desta maneira. Essa revista estava embalada e não dava para ver o que tinha dentro. E o que é interessante dessa imagem aqui é que ela é proibida. A Nintendo nunca autorizou a Nintendo World a criar imagens próprias. Só colocar o GameCube na capa não vai funcionar. E a gente resolveu ser ousado. A ousadia aqui teve a ver com um foda-se também, que a gente apertou naquele momento. Estranhamente, nem a Gradiente, nem a Nintendo of America reclamaram. E eu não entendo até hoje. Nintendo até hoje. É incrível o que a gente era capaz de fazer quando a gente não sabia muito, não tinha amarras, não tinha ninguém falando pra gente que não dava pra fazer. E na época eu não sabia valorizar o que significava fazer a revista oficial da Nintendo. E hoje eu vejo o impacto que teve com tantas pessoas voltando pra mim e tá sendo uma dádiva. É bom olhar pra trás. Isso sim é uma nostalgia de qualidade. Estraguei tua revista. A Nintendo World surgiu num momento em que a Nintendo não estava tão forte. Nem no Brasil, nem no resto do mundo. O mundo inteiro estava jogando GTA no PlayStation 2 e não tinha nada disso no GameCube. Acho que a gente conseguiu transformar essa sensação de que o que a Nintendo estava fazendo naquela época era a coisa mais interessante que ela poderia fazer mesmo. E aí, mais um encontro com o Miyamoto. A gente deu de presente para ele um monte de CDs de música brasileira e ele retribuiu com um cartão dele, o business card dele, que eu tenho até hoje, inclusive, com o telefone da mesa dele. Como pode, né? Você ter o cartão de visita do maior criador de games do mundo. E eu nunca usei, nunca liguei para ele, nunca mandei um e-mail. O Projeto Nintendistas é um livro que se propõe a contar a história da Nintendo no Brasil. Foi um projeto fomentado por um crowdfunding que teve a adesão de muita gente do Brasil inteiro, inclusive de outros países. E a cereja do bolo, eu acho que é a lista dos 500 maiores jogos de todos os tempos. A gente convidou críticos e também alguns apoiadores para votar e fazer essa lista inédita na imprensa brasileira e talvez mundial, para homenagear esses jogos que foram parte da nossa vida e que continuam ecoando nos nossos corações. O motivador desse livro não é a nostalgia, pura e simplesmente, mas sem ela não existe Projeto Nintendistas, porque tem que olhar para trás, e eu tô tentando olhar para trás de uma maneira positiva.
Aqui no Brasil é bem complicado. A gente paga o preço de 2 consoles do que é cobrado em um fora do Brasil, né? Infelizmente, é assim. Eu não procuro ter tudo, mas eu gosto de ter aquilo que me fez bem no passado, sabe?
A coleção hoje em dia não é baseado em título bom. A tiragem influencia.
Eu gosto muito desse termo que foi revelado nos últimos anos, que é o tal do FOMO, né? O Fear of Missing Out. No caso dos videogames é interessante, porque todos esses jogos que hoje são vendidos por uma fortuna, eles estavam disponíveis por um preço muito mais acessível nas suas épocas. Eu folheei a Nintendo World esses dias e daí tem as propagandas dos jogos do momento, né? E eu vejo ali jogos que hoje são considerados raríssimos, jogos que só foram lançados no Brasil. Você vê lá o preço, eu falo, nossa, eu imagino que muito colecionador deve pegar esses catálogos e olhar e falar assim, meu Deus, se eu soubesse.
E falando de itens que só saíram aqui no Brasil ou não saíram nos Estados Unidos, né? Você tinha o F1 Racing, que esse jogo ele só foi lançado no Brasil, então essa versão aqui.
Esse jogo aqui, eu peguei com vocês, inclusive, que é o Fórmula 1.
Fórmula 1.
Esse Fórmula 1 é interessante porque fora do Brasil, ele é muito cobiçado. O videogame NTSC funciona só cartuchos americanos e brasileiros. E esse jogo ele não teve uma versão americana. Então quem quer fazer o full set do Nintendo 64 fora do Brasil,
ele é valorizado.
Atrás desse daqui.
Sim.
Videogame nunca foi uma coisa só para criança. A gente tem esse fenômeno de marmanjos, adultos jogando videogame. Nunca houve tanta gente que jogou videogame na infância e que é adulto. E esse número só tende a crescer. Muitas dessas pessoas têm condições, têm acesso, têm a permissão social para continuar jogando. Esse fenômeno acontece porque as pessoas podem. Mas você tem que, superar aquele trauma da infância.
Eu brinco que isso aqui é para resolver um trauma de infância. Foram todos aqueles nãos. Depois na volta a gente compra, ou quem sabe no seu aniversário, no seu Natal. Então acaba sendo para preencher um vazio, para atuar mesmo como uma memória afetiva.
E lógico, se ele for comprar os videogames mais avançados, não é a mesma coisa.
Ele chama um amigo para comer uma pizza e tal, aí ele liga o Play 5. Um outro joga. Quando ele põe um Mario, quando ele põe um Sonic, acabou o PlayStation 5. E isso faz o quê? Faz com que a outra pessoa lembre também de que quando ele era criança, ele jogava na casa do amigo e começa a colecionar. O meu foco é colecionador. Então, assim, o antigo não dá para comparar. E eu tô só sobrevivendo por causa do antigo.
Nossa, se fosse só pelo videogame novo, você acha que
já tinha fechado.
It's clear that no one on Earth is safe from getting bitten by the nostalgia bug. Be it Dutch, German, Brazilian, these 80s and 90s kids all seem to be aiming at the same target, collecting their childhood back. One dusty box, scratch disc, or dirty cartridge at a time.
I do see myself as a collector of video games, of records also, and in both cases I have kind of like a similar approach in that I only buy things that are meaningful to me and that I want to consume, not just to, occupy space with.
When I look at my collection, I feel a proud accomplishment. I usually stand here, what am I gonna play? What is the game that I'm most proud of?
I collect to some level retro games, and I really love collecting video game soundtracks on CDs. I have this few drawers with games. So this is where I keep all my games. Once in a while I just open them and look at them, and then it's like, it feels so wrong, but it's like you just touch them for a little while.
I never intended to start collecting games, but I never got rid of any. At some point, you just have a small collection. And then I became a video game journalist. And at some point, you start receiving review copies. At the same time, rediscovering or discovering, most notably, retro games. You just buy an old console which you want to have. You buy this game which you read about. And there's also new games coming which you just purchase because you like them. And all these different streams of games just keep amounting to a bigger pile. I think I own close to 1,000 physical games, let alone digital games, which I've stopped keeping track of.
My whole collecting really started, I guess, when I was working at Nintendo and I started making a catalog of games that I had, because I started losing the overview of games that I actually had, and that's where I got seriously bitten by the collector's bug, and I started going to these conventions. I started ordering games via eBay online. I started visiting these retro stores.
It's fun to see your collection grow, and it's fun to see, this year was a good year. I have a lot of new games that I was looking for.
This is my office / man cave / game room. A Philips 16:9 widescreen CRT, vertically oriented Sony PVM, Bang & Olufsen MX7000 CRT TV. In this in-between space, I have a lot of boxes of consoles and peripherals. These are all Japanese Sega Saturn games, Japanese and European PlayStation 1 games, Dreamcast games, PS2 games, original Xbox games, GameCube games, Xbox 360 games, and Nintendo Wii games. And then here you see some oddly shaped boxes like collector's editions and the like. My fourth CRT television in this room is Sony Trinitron Vega. Here you see a European NES, a European Mega Drive with a 60Hz switch, European Super Nintendo with a 60Hz switch, and just a plain old European N64. And there are the games for it. NES games, Super Nintendo games over there. Master System games are also there. I don't have too many of them. DS, GBA games. Of course, there's a whole pile of physical Switch games as well. And Milton and Bradley Vectrex games, about 8 cartridges for the 1982 Vectrex console, the oldest console that I have in my possession. This is a Vectrex console from 1982. I got this from a colleague at Nintendo who had it sitting as a sort of a desk toy, like at his desk. But when he was leaving the company, he was telling me, if I bring this back home, my girlfriend will kill me. It's a very cool console, and it doesn't have a pixel monitor, but a vector monitor, meaning that it draws like perfect lines. Everything is built up from lines, what you see on screen. It gives it a very cool sort of retro futuristic sort of appeal. A bit of a luxury item at its time, and it only had a shelf life of 1.5 years or something. I am a little bit wary, like every time I turn it on, I'm praying and hoping it actually does still turn on, because it's a very old piece of machinery at this point. So lucky me for getting a free one from a colleague that didn't want his girlfriend to kill him.
For the last 10 years now, 23 years. That's staggering. It's a staggering number. Well, over 30 years I've been collecting, and now the older it gets, the older I get, we're getting to ages now that are that is so long, multiple decades. So there is another feeling there. It's just like holding an old book. It gives a little bit of a pang of nostalgia and extra love and care. Oh, I need to take extra care of this.
Acho que o item mais antigo aqui disso que eu trouxe, que não é exatamente uma coleção, mas são mais memórias, né, souvenirs de uma vida dedicada aos games. Esse cartuchinho aqui, ó, do Decathlon. Tem aqui o meu Game Boy. A gente tá falando aí de 1990 e ele não tá no seu melhor estado, ele não tá nem funcionando, a tela caiu. E hoje eu entendo que isso aqui é uma raridade, é uma peça de museu. Inclusive no museu da Nintendo, em Nova York, na loja Nintendo World Store, tem um Game Boy desse aqui, todo queimado, que sobreviveu à Guerra do Golfo. O SimCity foi um dos jogos mais importantes na minha vida gamer, e eu sei que isso aqui não é barato hoje. Dr. Mario é um dos meus jogos favoritos. Eu até vou abrir aqui para você ver. Eu vou fazer um unboxing aqui, é o meu primeiro unboxing na minha vida, mas... Olha só, isso aqui parece que saiu da fábrica ontem. Ó, é lindo. Isso aqui é dos tempos também que eu trabalhei na Nintendo aqui no Brasil, né? Sobrou um cartuchinho. E aqui um segredo, eu nunca tive um Super Nintendo. Você acredita, cara? Falando em Zelda, eu tenho o meu Zelda Wind Waker. ele é autografado 2 vezes. Um autógrafo com caneta esferográfica de 2004 e um autógrafo com uma caneta melhor em 2019. Ou seja, 15 anos separam os 2 autógrafos que foram feitos pela mesma pessoa, o Eiji Aonuma, que é o diretor dos jogos Zelda, o diretor desse jogo, Wind Waker. Eu tive a oportunidade de encontrá-lo 2 vezes e nas 2 vezes eu pedi para ele autografar o mesmo jogo. Então, para mim, colecionar jogos tem a ver com a história que aquilo tem na minha vida. E esse aqui, você pode ter certeza, vai continuar comigo. Chrono Trigger, que é talvez um dos meus 3, 4 jogos favoritos. E é incrível a conservação disso aqui. Parece novo. Ele parece que foi saído da fábrica. Eles até embalaram num plastiquinho. A versão norte-americana desse jogo, ela vale uma fortuna. Em qualquer feira de colecionadores que você for, certamente vai ter alguém disposto a pagar, sei lá, mais de $1.000, $2.000. Eu precisava ter. Então, eu falei, por que não? Então, para mim, coleção tem a ver com isso. Eu vou guardar esse objeto e vou lembrar da ocasião em que eu comprei. Isso vai ser importante. Então, acho que para mim, nostalgia de objetos tem muito a ver com isso. Eu lembro do meu estado de espírito quando eu resolvi comprar esse negócio. Olha isso, tá novíssimo. Tem até um cheiro aqui. Tô muito orgulhoso disso aqui. Vou tirar.
My house isn't very large, so I bought this big IKEA closet. And if that's full and I buy new games, that means that some older games have to go out. It's also a nice way to make sure that for myself that I have the best collection of games that I want to play. Golden Sun, for example. Then it's like those memories are like, oh yeah, I remember this. And we were in the car and we went to Austria and I just had this Game Boy that first time and I was experiencing it. So it's like this giant wave of nostalgia that is attached to that game.
So, nostalgia has a deep effect on the lives of many people. But where does it come from? Do we even notice it as it takes hold of our minds?
The early 90s, I was in my mid-teens. Those are formative years. You're absorbing a lot more at that age, and everything has a deeper, more meaningful impact on you. Right now, it's like a hard drive that's starting to clog up. There's so much already there now. And there's so much that I need to make space for. I don't know how I will look back at this time period 10 years from now, for example. You can never really experience things in the same way that you did when you were a kid or a young adult anymore.
Nostalgia probably gets more intense the longer life goes on. When you feel transported back into the days when you played the game as a kid, that hits more than something I played like 5 years ago when my life was essentially the same.
It's not so much the act of playing and enjoying the game itself, it's also all the memories that it brings back from when you first played them. A lot of people will have like Christmas memories of certain games. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is a big one for me there. That was a very special Christmas 1998. We tend to sand away the rough edges of our memories and think of the good times. And I think that's why nostalgic, it's very tempting, it's very inviting, but that's also something that makes me kind of suspicious. Like it's almost like, hey, am I taking a drug here, you know?
Nostalgia é uma palavra muito perigosa. Tem quem não goste dela. Eu conheço gente que acha que não é benéfica, que é algo ruim, né? Que o sentimento nostálgico ele nunca é totalmente puro e livre de problemas. Eu discordo um pouco. Eu acho que nostalgia é boa, só que ela não pode ser o único motivador da vida.
Os meus clientes, eles vêm aqui, o olhinho dele brilha. Ele não quer só comprar. Ele quer que o filho dele conheça o que ele jogava quando ele tinha a mesma idade do filho. É bonito demais você ver o amor que um pai tem pelo filho e jogando videogame. A coleção para ele é troféu. Ele tem troféu pendurado, faz questão de mostrar ao amigo, faz questão de mostrar para a mulher.
Não é só o jogo que importa, sabe? É a história de como ele apareceu na minha coleção. Eis que um grande amigo tava precisando ali, tava passando por um momento de mudança na vida dele. E ele fala, cara, minha mulher falou pra eu vender alguns jogos. E eu acabei comprando o Crystal, o Red, o Blue e o Yellow dele, assim, por um preço muito bom. Tanto que vira piada quando a gente se encontra, que ele fala, eu ainda vou comprar aquele jogo de volta de você.
In a certain age in your life, certain neuron paths in your brain are created. All the things that I counted in the formative periods of your life is really strong today still. I think certain collectors are having a hard time to maybe let go of that past or just want to incorporate it forever in their lives.
Yeah, nostalgia skews your perspective. Absolutely.
Games tend to transcend nostalgia. You can listen to a Spice Girls album or watch Star Wars Episode 1, but it'll never be the same as it was in the late 90s. And you can play the game in the exact same way with the original console on a CRT TV if you like, because it's the same physical, visceral experience.
It's definitely more like stepping back in time a little bit. It's a different kind of need than just, oh, I want to play a good game. That just came out last week, for example.
I mean, it's impossible to judge any piece of media objectively in the first place, but then you give nostalgia on top of that. I don't know if some of those games that are like from back in the day are good or not. I just love them.
I can see that Secret of Mana sucks in a lot of ways. And I can also see that this doesn't bother me or I don't care. Because I love the game so much. I'm currently looking for Moonwalker by Michael Jackson. I played that when I was 12 or something at a friend's place. It's not particularly a very good game, but that's a nostalgia. I think, I would like to play that again. That's mostly because I want to think back to that period. Not that I think that it is an amazing game that I need in my collection, but that's purely one that I want to own and be able to play for nostalgia's sake.
If you just live out nostalgic times and you go back and only play older games and listen to older music and live with your older memories, you're not making any new memories anymore. You know, we do things right now as well and we make new memories. So it's important for me to also listen to new music, play new video games, etc. with the knowledge that I'm building new memories for later as well.
Nu begint het een beetje op te lijken. Dakar 2016.
I was in the desert for the Dakar Rally and thought, this is the same experience as when I was playing Journey, because I'm surrounded by sand and it's mystifying. And all these experiences were seeded by the games, which in turn were made using inspiration that the developers got when they were in the real world. So it's this crossbreeding effect of real world experiences being translated into games, which gamers play and then they open up to real world experiences. And the way that flows into each other is really magical to me. But then I also have nostalgic feelings for the games I didn't play at the time. Partly because of the aesthetic of those games, which are, they look old. Then it's not really clear what's nostalgia and what's just having an appreciation for games as they were at the time.
And it could be with a new game. I mean, I recently bought Stargate. I would not have bought it back in the day because it was a dime a dozen back then. And it was from a movie, so it had everything against it when it came out. But it's so smooth the way it looks and animates. It reminds me of that time, but I never played or even saw that game back then. So I have no nostalgic bond or feelings for that game particularly. But it reminds me of that period, so I do get nostalgic from that. And now you play it, and it's very cool. It's 20, God damn it, it's over 30 years old. It's over 30 years old.
Old games that I've never played before can completely blow me away because I do consciously place them on a timeline of when they were made.
So it's never going away. It's not like retro games are disappearing. If anything, retro games are stronger than ever. And I happen to be one of those idiots which feels the need to actually buy them and collect them. But the impact of games from the past will only grow stronger.
Back then, we were like, wow, this is possible and amazing that you could walk through dungeons and solve puzzles in them.
A gente nem sabia o que era uma DLC. A SEGA trouxe Sonic 3 e Knuckles. Quando eu vi esse jogo original pela primeira vez e vi que quando a gente coloca o Sonic 3, ele vira Sonic 3 e Knuckles, e traz fases novas. Cara, minha mente explodiu naquela época, sabe? Hoje em dia a gente vê jogo sendo lançado meio quebrado, né? E a gente fica aguardando atualizações para ver ele ser consertado. Na época que a DLC nem sonhava existir, porque a internet não era como é hoje, cara, isso aqui foi fantástico. Foi uma jogada, assim, sensacional da SEGA. Com certeza o meu Sonic 2D favorito.
A lot of games that I play now and that I like, I'm pretty sure that I will want to revisit them at some point. They will become nostalgic pieces of software and retro in a way.
When is actually the point when you decide that something is retro or not?
When I buy a new Super Nintendo game that came out in 1993 that I never played before, it still can feel nostalgic because it has the vibe of that time, of that era.
I thought I lost that I didn't build new nostalgia, but you still do. Because I have it now with Wii and Wii U games. I look at those boxes and certain games, I'm getting a feeling like, whoa, those were really great games. And I still have them available to play. Yeah, it's also growth mindset. You grow with the systems, but you don't realize it when you're playing the new games. It takes time to form those new memories.
For instance, I'm already picturing myself, my wife, and our 2 kids, hopefully, doing a Baldur's Gate 3 co-op campaign in 10 years' time. And it's not always easy to see which games will have that quality, because there are these games which we collectively didn't like, which we do appreciate now.
I already have good memories of playing Tears of the Kingdom for the first time, for example. And that time when we got it, and me and my kids were all excited about it, starting our own save game and having these conversations about it, like, oh, what did you encounter? What did you see and what did you experience?
There is one game I will probably be most nostalgic about for the rest of my life, and basically has thrown off Final Fantasy VII of my favorite games top, and that's Expedition 33.
Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, the best game of 2025. What makes this one so special is it's the Lumiere edition, a extra limited edition which was only released in Portugal, Spain and Italy. I'm so fortunate to own this because it's one of the best games ever, if you ask me.
I've been waiting for a game like that for years. Oh yeah, I will definitely be nostalgic about Expedition 33.
With so many high emotions blossoming around these games, nostalgia has become an actual commodity. It's not just about finding an old game. You also have to pay for it, if you can.
Sometimes it just costs a little more to satisfy that feeling, to get that little piece of happiness from your past back.
Oh, animation. Some games are very valuable that I found for really a low price. But yeah, it's just that I think it's worth to me. I don't think it would be the same if the games were all like $1.
Money is definitely an issue when buying games. You know how the retro gaming secondhand market is bubbling. Some prices are definitely just made up, complete fiction.
On occasion, I now buy a game where it's purely as a collector. This is for my collection. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, one of my favorite point-and-click adventures. So expensive and so hard to find. This is one of the few games that I bought just pure for collecting. I'm not gonna buy an Amiga and boot up these diskette stuff. No, I'm not gonna do that. This is purely to show the box and look at what I got.
So this one's really special to me because it was gifted by my lovely befriended co-workers at the B&R. The tragedy that was Concord, the live service hero shooter, literally pulled from stores because Sony didn't like the sales, to put it like that, even though it cost them over 150 million in terms of development budget. It is a very bad game. Well, it's not a very bad game, it's a mediocre game. And my friends, Niels, Donner and Jochem decided, okay, we need to get Joe a copy now. So they rang the store, they convinced the shop owner to pull one from the box, which was about to go back to Sony, and they bought it for me. It's never going away because you literally can't buy this game anymore. Owning a piece of video game history is one of the main things what it's all about.
I happened to get this in a collection I bought. It's Ghostline. It's a really rare Kemco RPG. It's really crazy. This is a game that you never come across, not even loose in the Netherlands, I think. It's not priced yet. I think it's gonna be a conversation with a collector that knows what it is. If you see it in America, it's like sealed, maybe $600 to $1,000, I think.
The craziest thing that I bought was the Nintendo 64 disk drive. So this is the actual Nintendo 64 with the disk drive add-on. People thought that I was crazy when I bought that because the thing had to come over from Japan. I imported this from Japan because I wanted to play the expansion of F-Zero X. And then you hope that it's in one piece.
Oh God.
But it felt so good. And it's worth every penny.
I also work for Power Unlimited.nl. Their editorial officer decided it was time for a cleanup. That's where I got this, which is the vinyl soundtrack to the original Red Dead Redemption. And I have a co-worker who's really into vinyl. It's like, oh, that's funny, I've got a vinyl game soundtrack. And he was like, oh, which one? I said, I think it's Red Dead Redemption 2. But I was like, no, wait, it's the original Red Dead Redemption. So he immediately went on Discogs to double check. And his face immediately pilled. He was like, dude, this is valued at over 700 euros. So that same night I took it out of the box and decided to put it in the sleeve. It's still sealed, but I want to keep it extra nice. So
I have a big box copy of Super Metroid. That was unreasonably expensive, especially considering that, of course, I had that very copy and it just got lost somewhere over the years. The German version, of course, that means it's a PAL version, but still that was the same box that I had as a kid. So this is like purely nostalgic reasons, right? I don't even have a Super Nintendo to play that on. Yeah, I've never spent not even close to like 1,000 euros or anything for a game.
Yeah, this is Super Mario Land 6 golden coins. It's sealed. I worked at the thrift store and it was there. And I paid €1 and it's worth maybe, I'm not sure. Sealed Game Boy games can go up to 30,000 euros, I think. I thought about opening because I wanted to see what's inside, but I never did, and I'm kind of grateful to myself that I didn't. So it's, yeah, very expensive.
this is the Holy Grail, a physical promo, so jewel case, copy of Fortnite. Actually, before the massively popular Battle Royale mode was added to it. The Battle Royale was a download. I didn't think much of it when I was gifted it from the publisher and gave it away to a friend who very kindly returned it to me once I found out many years later that this was going for over $2,000 on eBay. And I'll keep it forever. Not just because of the monetary value, but just because of its rarity, I guess. I try to not spend all my money on the games I collect. And I try to focus on buying games that really resonate with me. Castlevania 64 and Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. This came out literally 11 months after the original one. It was more of an update, really, than a sequel. The most I spent on a game that I really wanted to have was 120 euros, which is still modest, I know, but I'm just happy to have them. The N64 Castlevanias are very much games that were really criticized at launch. And only now there are people really appreciating them for what they are. So I felt, okay, I need them in my life. And I did pay slightly more than I should.
Secret of Evermore, I recently bought it for 250 euros, but it's in mint condition. I really like this game, so I paid up for it.
Game series that I love, I think the most, is Castlevania. Really wanted every Castlevania game, and I have all of them now. I even managed to snag this one, and this is so goddamn expensive. I lucked out that I even found this for a reasonable price. And if I tell you the price, it doesn't sound that reasonable.
It's fine. Might as well go to a bar and get drunk every night. Let them game. That's a better way to entertain yourself.
I fully agree with her with that approach, to be honest. So, well, if there's a new package coming in with the new Transformers, she said, oh, please, another one?
He already used the garage box of my best friend to put boxes of games in. He also used his mom's cellar to put stuff in, so he's already dividing it into separate rooms. outside our house because it doesn't fit anymore.
Who does not like Knight Rider? So they made a kid one. And this transforms into a robot, which is amazing.
Yeah, his problem, not my problem. That's the good thing about it. It's not my problem.
But she also sees that I do a lot with it. I make a photo of it. I get a lot sent to me to do something with it, promotion-wise or a short review or something. I have been doing the Instagram social media page as Retro Game Pop-Up for 6 years now, just the same time that I've been doing my website. It's the mindset with which I buy games is not pure collecting stuff. It's I want to be able to play this game when I want to. So I bought this first-person game. It's not all that great, I heard, but it was €3 or something, and I don't have it yet. I always feel a certain passion, and that's really what sparks me and drives me on.
I'm not sure what triggers a nostalgic motivation, but I like artwork. I like to have the games complete with the manual and all the extra inserts. It's fun to know that you have it, to see it, to have it in your hands. I like to have it physical because it's a part of who I am. The only problem I have is completing sometimes the games. Like if I miss a manual, you know, it irritates me like, oh, I know this game is missing a manual, and then sometimes you have to pay a lot for just the manual. You can still play the game if it's in crap condition. It's for your own good sake that you know you have it complete, right?
There's not like any specific game where I feel like I need to have the manual and I need to have the box. It's definitely nice. It's nice to have, but the games are the most important aspect of it. Disc only is a whole other matter. I don't have any games that are disc only. Everything comes with at least a box and most of the times a manual as well. When I started out collecting, you could still buy a lot of NES and SNES cartridges for very little money. And those times are definitely over, which in a way also has forced me to be even more discriminate about what I buy. There's one game that I spent more money on than any other singular game, and that's a Sega Saturn shoot 'em up called Battle Garega. When I looked up prices on eBay, it went for something like €100 or $100. Well, years went by and that price was not coming down. In fact, it kind of doubled its value over time. Then I saw it in a retro game store in Amsterdam for €220. And I was thinking I could buy this right now or wait for it to become even more expensive. So I put cash aside over a couple of months. And then after like 3 or 4 months, I went back to that store. And of course, they still had it because those items might be rare and maybe even sought after. But it's not something that somebody buys on an impulse. And I put my wads of cash together and shelled out for that single game.
O meu item mais raro de Nintendo 64 e é um dos itens mais caros da minha coleção, que é uma edição do Super Bowling de Nintendo 64. Esse jogo aqui hoje ele tá avaliado em mais de $7.000. Ele está lacrado e graded. Existem menos de 6 unidades no mundo nesse estado.
If it would be cheap, I would like to have every game complete in box. And the second thing is it worth it for me with this game to own it complete in box or not? With the Super NES, for example, it's so expensive. I was also a big fan of Super Metroid, so I got the big box over here. I nearly threw this out because of space. That's also an issue now. Everything takes up a lot of space. And those boxes are more for show because I'm not going to put them in and out of the box constantly because that would ruin the cardboard eventually.
But having all that stuff is no good without a proper screen to play on. If you were born after the 2010s, you might not remember CRT TVs. They were big, heavy, and haven't been produced in over a decade, which to the modern retro gamers makes them worth their excessive weight in gold.
Playing old games on modern TVs, on OLEDs and flat screens, at first it didn't bother me. I thought it was an improvement. I went back and forth when I put up CRT TVs again and really start using them again.
When you play old games on a modern screen, it just doesn't look the same. It looks over-sharpened. It introduces a lot of lag. So I prefer to play it as intended and on a CRT.
It's definitely better on a CRT 9 times out of 10, unless you do all kind of trickery. I think most of us have forgotten how crisp it can look. on a CRT TV because we thought it sucked graphically when we started to go to flat screens. And it looks better on a CRT TV than on a big OLED or something. And that's, I know that's also partially because of nostalgia, and I grew up with such a thing. Just in and of itself, using the thing.
Você pega produto de 30 anos atrás, você pega Super Nintendo. Se você deixar 10 anos sem ligar, você vai ligar depois de 10 anos, uma sopradinha, ele vai funcionar. Você não pode falar a mesma coisa de PlayStation 1, de Dreamcast. Não pode. Então, assim, não dá para comparar com as coisas de antigamente. Por exemplo, você não tá vendo televisão de LED ligada. Só tem uma, porque eu achei espacinho para ela.
Playing an N64 game on those TVs is a form of self-torture. It's ridiculous how ugly it looks.
Lower resolution looks better on a TV that doesn't have a high resolution. So that's why older games look how they are intended to look.
For me, that doesn't really apply. I'm fine playing a game on a screen that just shows it well.
I get why a lot of people want to play on CRTs. Obviously, it's the original intended way to play these games, but I really don't mind. I think the pixel art looks great on modern TVs. I like the clean look.
And the inputs. Older TVs have all the required inputs like RGB SCART and component.
For people who don't know this, Europe used the SCART cable, which is superior. Oh, these things are so big.
Sometimes I'm more busy to get the perfect image than playing a game. Sometimes I think, what am I doing? I'm getting the best cables, the best picture. But yeah, just play the game.
I'm not so much that I'm buying the broadcasting monitors and everything that some have been doing, but I have some quite good CRTs. I have also two Sega arcade cabinets, also with CRT monitors in them. I also like still to get a game, plug it in and play it like it's meant to be. I'm really more about the experience, seeing it stand there and taking it out of the box. I like the full experience. It's reliving the whole moment.
If you have retro aesthetic looking new games which contain CRT style filters, I'll never switch them on because that's not my jam. I'll happily play Smash Brothers, even Melee on my Wii, because that contains an HDMI cable to my 4K TV and it works just fine for me.
Yeah, Michiel wanted to have scan lines in the game.
One of our testers, a guy in Japan, he was also pushing like, yeah, why don't you guys make a CRT filter for the game? And I think Hans was less enthusiastic about the idea, but he was thinking, oh, if we do this, I want to do it properly.
I didn't see the point because contrary to him, I'm not a hardware purist. He kind of insisted on wanting to have that because he likes that style and likes to see scan lines and screen curvature.
So he started studying CRT technology and how to break up red, green, and blue values.
We came to the compromise that I would look into the tech of building proper scan lines.
Make it not like a CRT filter, but more of a CRT emulation.
It was more like, okay, we're going to do it, but we want to do it properly. We're not going to do a simple overlay or reducing the color on every second line or something like that, but actually do pixel simulation. And that looked cool. I'm proud of it working in the way that we imagined it would.
But, you know, whatever you like, my wife will probably kick me out of the house if I do drag one into it.
Obviously, you have a different feeling when you're inserting a cartridge into a Super Nintendo.
I think it's also the muscle memory I still have in my thumbs. Oh god, it's the best. Yeah, this is definitely always fun. Like holding that controller and playing with that.
I love the feeling of using an old TV, an old console, and booting it up. And I noticed this especially, for example, when I played Zelda on the NES for the first time in 30 years. I managed to get the golden cartridge of the original NES game. I booted that one up, and this feels so much cooler. It's the original console, the original game. It's also a sort of a ritual, or it brings a certain heft to the quality of the experience.
So I'm trying to put my Gradius cartridge in the NES. The NES is the most temperamental of all these older systems. It's a real biatch sometimes to get it to work. But look, it worked.
But that's around playing the game or before playing the game. When it's the actual gameplay, then I don't feel a difference there. It's not that I dislike CRT screens or anything, but if I play on original hardware or if I play on new hardware, it all disappears anyways, because it's just the game and the direct connection to it.
And these days it's easy to have an emulation of games. And although this is fun and all, it's not the same as playing it on the original hardware.
A lot of 3D games didn't work well. They have textures missing, always glitches. 2D games work well, but then again, I prefer it to play it on a CRT TV.
PlayStation 2 games look way better, HD, 4K, upscaled on a PC, and that will be the future. I mean, all these discs within 50 years will most likely be gone. They're not forever, at least. I have some hope that there will be people around that know how to fix the stuff. Also, it will be better on OLED, better playable by then. We have those new machines coming up more and more.
This would be one example of, not original hardware. It resembles original hardware a lot, but objectively, the technology is more advanced, right? The screen is better and all that. I can play, for example, this cool thing that I have. I'm a big fan of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy. And this is a custom-made ROM of the game. This is the hacked Game Boy Color version of Metroid 2 that never existed. Somebody made this, can play it on an actual Game Boy Color, or if you have something like the Analog Pocket, you can play that.
The aging hardware has brought the need of experts, such as Fabio Michelin. He's dedicated to keeping old games and consoles playable way into the future. At his company, GameScare, back in São Paulo, he works daily to give retro gamers the sharpest pixels south of the equator.
Eu sou o Fábio Michelin, tenho 46 anos e sempre trabalhei com games, né? Quando era mais novo, escrevia para revistas de videogame, né? Algumas revistas famosas aqui do Brasil, como a Nintendo World, GM Brasil, Ação Games. Hoje eu tenho a GameScare, que é uma empresa totalmente voltada para o público retrô que joga videogame. A gente aqui então é focado em conserto, prevenção, né, recuperação de consoles antigos e modificação também. Por exemplo, troca de capacitores, que são componentes que com o tempo eles perdem a sua eficiência. Então aqui a gente retirou todos os capacitores eletrolíticos, né, da placa. Eles são os capacitores que normalmente mais vazam nos consoles e ele acaba impregnando a placa. Então quando a gente remove todos os capacitores, a gente faz um banho químico para neutralizar esse ácido. E aí a gente coloca os capacitores novos, né, todos iguais os que tinha na placa originalmente, né? Só que são capacitores novos, mais modernos, então eles vão durar bastante tempo. E a gente faz modificações e adaptações para consoles, por exemplo, eles ficarem mais amigáveis para serem conectados em TVs modernas. Aqui atrás a gente fez também um mod RGB nesse console. Então essa plaquinha ela vai conectada aqui na saída onde vai o vídeo, né? E é conectado aqui nos pontos que puxa o sinal de sincronismo e RGB. Aí aqui a gente já vai remontar ele e fazer os testes. Hoje eu posso dizer que o meu trabalho é diretamente ligado à nostalgia, né? Todos os clientes que me procuram têm uma nostalgia forte com esses consoles, né? Eu acho que a nostalgia fala mais alto. O jogo, a gente já jogou muitas vezes, mas a sensação de reviver aquele momento, de você estar jogando aquele jogo novamente, de ter o console, de estar com o controle original na mão, eu acho que esse sentimento é mais de 50% da alegria, do prazer de jogar esse jogo novamente. Esse console aqui é o primeiro console que a gente desenvolveu. Ele é baseado numa placa original de Neo Geo, onde a gente consegue pegar uma placa que era usada nos fliperamas e a gente coloca duas placas aqui que a gente fabrica e adapta essa placa de arcade para ser ligado como se fosse um console caseiro. Então tem a entrada dos controles aqui, as saídas de vídeo aqui atrás. Há mais ou menos uns 2, 3 anos a gente começou um projeto bem ambicioso que é o do GF1 Neptune. A ideia é a gente recriar o console lendário da Sega, que é o Neptune, que seria a junção do Mega Drive e do 32X. Então hoje, com as facilidades do FPGA, que são equipamentos que conseguem reconstruir o hardware né? Então, dentro de um chip, a gente consegue construir todo o circuito de um console e ele emula aquele circuito. Esse aqui é o Neptune que a gente está desenvolvendo. Esse aqui é um cartucho que a gente fabrica, que é o Mark I. Então, esse jogo aqui é um jogo de Mega Drive, né? Funciona em qualquer console Mega Drive. E aqui a gente está rodando ele no Neptune. Esse jogo aqui é um jogo de um time francês, que é a Neofeed. Então a gente licenciou esse jogo aqui com eles, né? Ele não foi lançado oficialmente aqui no Brasil ainda, vai ser lançado pela Gamescare. E é um jogo de Mega Drive super legal, muito gigantesco, ele tem 100 megas de tamanho, né? Então é o maior jogo de Mega Drive já feito. Por ele usar essa nova arquitetura de FPGA, ele consegue reagir aos acessórios de maneira perfeita. E aqui é o slot de cartucho original, onde ele vai aceitar os cartuchos de Mega Drive 32X e de Master System com um adaptador que a gente está desenvolvendo também. E esse cartucho vai achar que está no Mega Drive de verdade, vai tocar perfeitamente como se ele estivesse no Mega Drive. Eu acho que primeiro tem a ver com a nostalgia, trazer esse sentimento retrô para os jogos, mesmo a gente tendo esse poder de fogo para fazer coisas mais modernas, mais impressionantes. Eu trazer um jogo novo hoje para uma plataforma que eu jogo desde que eu tinha 10 anos de idade. Isso explode a minha mente.
Os games, eles são muito nostálgicos, muito porque os fãs insistem, mas a indústria da tecnologia não está interessada em ser nostálgica para os videogames, o que é uma pena. O grande problema dessa indústria hoje do colecionismo de games é que ela se retroalimenta e não tem mais de onde sair nada. Os preços subiram por conta dos próprios colecionadores. Eu vejo a indústria de games hoje nem sabendo lidar muito bem com esse tipo de coleção e com preservação histórica também, né? O que é um problema. Felizmente existe a internet ainda serve como um bom depositório de informações, um catálogo.
I don't think we can get around that we have to preserve them on computers.
I mean, the PC so far has been the only platform where games really got preserved, right? Including non-PC games through emulation.
In the end, the PC will be the only place where you can play retro games. Consoles will give out. The electronics gets older and older.
PC gaming, I think, is going to be the future. I know I'm not sure about this, but I think it's a realistic vision to have.
Some people would love that. The PC is in a way the master race.
But yeah, let's not dwindle upon how everything will eventually turn to dust.
But not everything is dust yet, Pierre. There are serious people out there actively working on preserving games. Like in the city of Hilversum, close by Amsterdam, where the guys at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision are thinking ahead. With a focus on Dutch games or games in some way connected to the country, they work hard to make sure that these bits and bytes of history don't get lost forever.
My name is Wietse Koppelman. I work at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision as a curator for culture and entertainment. In that is included video games, and what I do is I collect media from our Dutch media heritage and we store it here at the Sound and Vision. Sound and Vision is the media archive of the Netherlands. We archive mostly what the Dutch public broadcasters produce here at the Media Park in Hilversum. We store that in our archive. As the media landscape is changing, is broadening, so is our scope on what is interesting to archive. For us, it was an interesting experiment on the one hand to see if we could include video games in our archive. And in the Netherlands, no one was really doing something like this. So if not us, who then, you know?
My name is Willem Hilhorst. I am a media manager for games at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision. In my day-to-day job, I am responsible for helping to preserve Dutch games for eternity and to make sure that they are playable in the far future so people can access them as cultural heritage. It's important to preserve games because games, unlike other forms of media, depend on the interactivity with the player. Playing these games requires a lot more work in terms of preservation. That's kind of what my job entails, like finding out how to make sure that the interactivity can be as authentically replicated as possible.
Willem works at the Vereeuwigen department. Beautifully translated, that would be Eternalizing department. Does the department title get any better than that?
So here we are in our physical games depot. So this is not usually accessible. And here we keep a lot of our physical game objects. So all these games have been digitized. We keep them as digital forms. With all the physical copies of the games we have downstairs, we digitize those copies. So we make sure that they're playable digital file formats.
Nothing that we store here at Sound and Vision, be it video games, be it radio, be it television, be it film, we do without the permission of the rights holders.
We don't go out and just buy games, but we ask the rights holders to sign an agreement with us so that we are legally allowed to make sure that they're preserved. So we have games from 1980-ish onwards, and we load those up into this computer, which we use for emulation purposes. We don't have an actual Nintendo Wii setup here or a Windows 98 PC, but we figure those out in emulation. The problem with emulation is that it's a lot of trial and error, so you're always looking for the right way to authentically replicate these programs in the right software environment. So what we have here is a list of all our emulation packages, and these are self-contained programs that contain all the information, both the digital copy of the game as well as the emulator. If you ask me, the best one, A2 Racer 2, where you race around through 3D recreations of European cities, but in particular Amsterdam and the Netherlands. We need a specific version of Windows for this because the game was designed for Windows 98. So behold, some very familiar screens, and we are booted straight into Windows, into the game. We want it as plug and play as possible. I can press start and we can start racing through Amsterdam. So once we got all this stuff together, we put it in what we dub an emulation package, which is like a container that has everything. And that means that when people come to the archive and they request, hey, we see in your collection that you have Jazz Jackrabbit, I would like to have access to that game and materials. We prepare that emulation package downstairs in our customer support center, and then people can play and access the materials over there in a closed environment. They're not allowed to make copies of the game, they can't take it home with them, but they are able to fully play the game in a safe environment.
Sound and Vision is first and foremost an archive, but this is our presentation part. This exhibit here, it's called Game Design, shows you what different, let's say, lead roles within the game design process do. What does the art department do when it comes to video games? If you're a level designer, how are levels built in video games? This corresponds with the screen. It's a touch screen, so you can also just touch the screen, but this makes it easier because you can also kind of turn it like this. And then you can add certain objects to your level. You can change the sound. Or is it change the environment? Whoop. To just a totally different look. Where you start over there, this is your entire level. But from here you can just start playing. Our core collection is, of course, Dutch objects, what we have. But sometimes you get these weird objects and you know, okay, if we're not gonna take this, someone's gonna go like, dude, what are you doing?
So one of these games here is a physical cartridge for Tetris. This is an NES cartridge, but in particular, this one is signed by Alexei Pajitnov, the original designer of Tetris. And Tetris does have an interesting connection to the Netherlands because Henk Rogers was originally born in the Netherlands, and he was the guy who managed to get Alexei Pajitnov and Tetris out of Russia and made it a commercial juggernaut. We also have exactly one cartridge for Super Mario Brothers. Now you might think, wait a minute, that's not Dutch. You're totally right. There's no connection here. But this one is signed by the legendary Koji Kondo, who is the composer for the Super Mario theme and all the music. And when we were donated this, we couldn't say no. Like, this is a bit of that nostalgia, but also recognition of like one of the greats of the games industry.
Do I think video games are art?
I think I do, yeah.
Here at Sound and Vision, from our perspective, we can also be one of those, well, let's say, value carriers who can give it the label art. We try to do that, but we're not yelling that it's art. We're saying more it's cultural heritage.
And I think with the definition of art, you always go into a subjective. I think that's proper art and that's bad art. But with cultural heritage, you say it's of our culture, it's of our society. The only way to keep history alive is to make sure that people have access to it. And with games especially, I think that's important.
Everyone today already sees that it's important what we have here to show that video games are something that is going to be around and is going to evolve and be a permanent part of our culture. That's what kind of fills my day, and I'm very happy for that.
There's going to be a balance. Like, do you value that authenticity that collectors and people with physical games have? Or do you really want to make sure that you can just play these games and people know what they are about and might lose some lesser known games in the process?
I'm happy to know there are efforts to at least make sure games are conserved. Ultimately, the rights still belong to the rights holders, and they are sadly often reluctant to cooperate. But I'm confident that one way or another, these older games will always be around.
But the big companies seem to be moving in the opposite direction. Oh, you may be shocked to learn that billion-dollar corporations don't really care about being very consumer friendly.
Muitas empresas de games que estão em atividade hoje, elas são antigas, então existe história que não está sendo bem conservada pelas próprias empresas.
When you look at newer games, where you have to be online to be able to even play the game, and we're talking about a single-player game, that's just god-awful. Who thought of that?
It's pretty shameful that they don't seem to care about game preservation. It's always just some little guys.
Cara, games keycards, que absurdo, né? Tipo, tem tanto absurdo hoje da vida moderna. Como é que os caras têm coragem de vender uma caixinha de jogo com um cartucho vazio? É muita cara de pau, né, cara?
Você passa um cartucho desse pra mim, eu vou revender usado.
Sim.
Tem que ter internet.
Tem que ter internet. Imagina você estar numa viagem. Putz, eu vou pegar um avião agora, eu vou jogar.
Né?
Coloquei ele no Switch, você precisa baixar o conteúdo.
Nós somos contra.
Eu acho que todos nós, eu acho que é unânime, então.
Mas isso aí, tudo que faz que não é bom, não vai muito longe. Eu acho que
Games have the right to be preserved, and you buy something, you buy a game, you buy the right to play that game. And then at some point, you're not able to play the game anymore because they shut down the service? I think that's wrong. It's inherently wrong.
Sorry to break it to you, Jordi, but they just want your money after all.
And a game that lasts forever is a game that cannot be sold twice.
I try not to support buying download codes and that sort of stuff. I really just like the complete physical media. I think it's also a shame that they don't put any booklets anymore in the cases. When you spend quite a lot of money on something, I want to see something in return, not just digital, but also physical. I really like the physical aspects.
For ourselves, for example, right? We release digitally first and then physical down the line. For things like that, I buy digital first and then probably buy a physical again later. Sometimes I do it for games that I know that I'm gonna play a lot on a certain platform, but I still want to have it on another platform. I am part of the problem, yeah.
Okay, so some games do get sold twice, but those stock prices need to go up and up and up. And all these poor CEOs, well, they gotta eat. Maybe there's a way to keep the cash flowing forever. Hold on, I feel like I know this one. Oh yeah, credit cards.
I do draw the line at like Game Pass. Same with PlayStation Plus and other subscription services.
We probably all recognize this from video streaming services as well. You'll just be browsing and not knowing what to touch.
In the period that you could copy games and movies, like whatever, you could just download whatever you wanted. I don't know, it just mentally does not, you cannot put yourself to one game then. That's the whole issue.
Especially on Steam, when things are dirt cheap and you basically run out of reasons not to buy something. I think there's like a philosophical analogy for that. If you have too much choice, you end up choosing nothing.
There's definitely a thing called choice paralysis, right? My backlog is so intimidating that it, literally paralyzes me.
Hey, here's 1,000 games. Which one should you play first now?
Almost everyone that I know that has these retro devices on which they have every SNES, every NES game that has ever existed. If you got so many games, you play none of them or just all a couple seconds. It's fleeting. It becomes completely fleeting. Most of them say the same. They say, I hardly play anything. I just do stuff a couple minutes and then I stop with it again.
And I do think collecting games is helpful there. If you have them lying about, you can just touch them, be inspired by the title, by the artwork, by the box, and it'll offer a whole new incentive to play a game.
So as you can probably tell by the reflections here sometimes, most of these games are sealed, and I have some more over there, and I just didn't have the time to play them yet. As probably everybody that you interview is saying, I only buy games that I want to play.
It's not pure collecting. I want to be able to play this game when I want to, not just to, occupy space with.
I'm not buying games just to have them. Yeah, but it's tough. The backlog is ever growing, and I'm probably never going to play all of the games that I have. That's just a fact.
Well, that's a heartwarming feeling, Hans. But worry not, for our passion for collecting and our huge backlogs are not going to waste. As we look at the past with nostalgia, we can also be excited about the future and make sure we pass on the torch to the next generation of players.
I think what we're seeing nowadays is kind of this changeover to people who've grown up with games and having a nostalgic feeling for it, but also wanting to make sure that their kids or their legacy can be played in the future.
Kids these days. I don't have kids, and I don't see that many kids. I probably see Michiel's kids the most, and they're big gamers.
I'm married for 22 years to a lady from Nepal. We have 2 children. My daughter is almost 17, and her name is Ila. And my son has turned 15 in August, and his name is Taran. Especially my son, he's really deep into video games. With my daughter, it's more on and off. She finds one particular game she's really into, and then she plays it and watches countless hours of YouTube videos about it as well.
I play video games, not as much as my dad or my little brother. Right now, I'm really into Stardew Valley. I've been playing that a lot. But I would say my favorite series would be The Legend of Zelda, just any Zelda game.
Taran, my son, he is very much into them. I think it's his main hobby.
Parents, they don't like video games. At least in the time that we grew up. For them, it was more like the annoying sounds in the background. They didn't understand why it was fun. They couldn't get into that world like we did. Which is kind of sad, because I would have loved to play a game with my mother or with my father back then. I think it would have made our connection a lot better on a personal level.
I have a nephew called Jesse, almost of my daughter Ila's age. He was born 1 month later. From since he could talk, he was fascinated with video games. Whenever we had a birthday party or somewhere and I would come in, he wouldn't even say hi, uncle, or anything. He would just immediately just start talking video games to me. He got caught by the retro games collecting bug and even is now a completely CRT TV nut.
I like older games more than newer games because they're much more simplistic to get into. And I just like how it's just plug and play. You don't really have to get into the game itself, into the story or something. It's just really simple.
Back then, you bought a game and you played the shit out of it. With games these days, it's more like, here's a grocery list with things that you need to do to 100% it.
The fun thing about playing a lot of my older games is that those games you can just turn on, you're instantly in the action. There's no updates that you have to download. There's no like 2-hour tutorials that you have to go through.
Yeah, video games are important for them also. The apple does not fall far from the tree. Every day they want to play a video game or some video games.
My oldest son is quite a historian. He knows more about some games than me. And he really plays them through and through. This is my oldest son room. He's 14. He's not at home now. He really likes gaming. Got a little bit infected by me. Recently he asked me to set up a PlayStation 2 system because he really likes that era of games and he likes CRT with it. So I put this Sony Triniton I still had in his room. He has a selection of games that he wants to try. He keeps picking games that I did not want anymore myself.
Playing video games together with the 2 or 3 of us. We should do it more often, I think. It's not enough that we do this now. My kids love them as much as I do.
I'm a bit proud that he likes the old games as well. He is really into discovering historic games. He's now on a path to play all Sonic games.
And they don't play older games with some sort of prejudice or look at older games with some sort of prejudice. Just growing up in his household, they've been exposed to games of all ages.
I don't mind the graphics because I think that adds to the charm, you know?
Especially my son often complains about most of his friends are only into Fortnite. They see all the games here and then they just want to play Fortnite.
I have like 2 friends who also like Zelda, but they mostly like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, like more recent games. So usually when I do talk about games with them, it's either about like Minecraft or Roblox. I don't really talk about like older games. Whenever they do mention something like an older Zelda game, I do get quite surprised.
I'm really the only one of my friends to play retro games. Most of my friends only know about the Wii and they don't really have interest in it. Probably because it's old and the graphics look bad to them.
Because of the indie game scene, harkening back to low poly styles or pixel art styles, that sort of blurring line of the graphic standard and quality standard. After you played Minecraft, can you really complain about the graphics at that point? Well, at this point in my life, I get more and more confronted with the temporary nature of things.
Oh my god, oh my god.
So all we can do is try to experience things to our best degrees, get the most out of it. And never drop the controller.
The flow of time is indeed always cruel, but also unstoppable. In 40 years, Mario will turn 80, and God knows what he will be up to then. But what about all these people who grew up alongside Mario? What will they be doing when they turn 80?
I think I do nothing else but playing video games.
Honestly, looking at getting old, I think games will always be a part of my life.
Video games will always be very important to me.
As pessoas que hoje jogam videogame como adultas, elas têm muito orgulho de poder fazer isso. Não é nenhum absurdo um cara, em pleno 2026, mesmo ele tendo filhos, esposa e tenha 45 anos, falar que passou o fim de semana jogando. Tem gente que vai jogar futebol, tem gente que faz maratonas de séries, tem gente que fica jogando videogame.
When I'm 80 and games have not fundamentally changed in what they are, I'm just gonna keep doing this. It's fun, you know?
I'll still be playing video games for sure. I'm almost 50 now and I haven't given up on it.
I wonder if I'm 80, if I still have this collection.
Maybe I would start thinking, if everything is still in good shape, how to donate my stuff to the next generation, give it to my son and my daughter.
I'm not getting rid of my stuff because that feeling, the love for video games will return.
I will still play the old games that I've been playing over all those years. But I guess there will be a lot more retro games to play at that point.
I'll have a huge wall with a big cabinet and all the physical games I currently own. Maybe 40-50% more. Sort of a public space where more people can enjoy it.
I have this dream that we're all in this retirement home, and instead of like doing knitting, we're all just sitting around a TV still playing Smash Brothers or Mario Kart. We might all suck with our motor skills, but at the very least we're still having this communal enjoyment of video games.
I'm guessing when I'm 80, I'm no longer working, so hopefully I'll finally have the time to just do a limitless run on whatever I want to.
I think I will gradually slow down or sell it all off, but I'll always keep some. And I think I'll always keep working CLT and some base games.
I hope I'll finally finish those Elder Scrolls games, which I absolutely adore, but never finished them for some reason. No, I know the reason. Time.
My entire generation is like this. We grew up with it. We have a certain bond with it.
I don't see myself saying goodbye to the hobby anytime soon, no.
Our generation will play a lot of games.
In this current day and age, there's just no time to do that. But in 40 years' time, we'll have all these elderly people around me and youngsters hopefully enjoying all these games and more.
We may not yet realize, but as far as gaming goes, today is just as good as yesterday. Our minds are constantly building nostalgia as we go along, but we only feel its presence when it hits us in the face. It's almost like when the good times are beyond our grasp, that's when we'll do almost anything to recapture them. But look around you, we still got it all. From big fat CRT TVs to computers that spit out high frame rate masterpieces. Old games, new games, retro, modern, action, adventure, puzzling, building, destroying, cooking, jumping, running, climbing, backflipping, shooting, flying, swimming, punching, kicking, bananas, heart pieces, question marks, exclamation marks, stars, shines, shrines, coins, more bananas, Wumpa fruit, herbs, jiggies, zombies, ghosts, turtles, archaeologists, more archaeologists, one more archaeologist, robots, Greek gods, northern gods, Jedi, plumbers, princesses, monkeys, Pokemon, heroes, villains, lovers, hunters, fear, comfort, nostalgia. Depending on who you ask, the good old days were the 80s. Others will say the 90s. The 2000s were no different. 2010s were a banger. And halfway down the 2020s, gaming is not that bad either. Mostly. But make no mistake, at some point, our today will become a back then as well. So don't wait up. Pick up a controller, any controller, and start working on your next piece of nostalgia. What will it be?